And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. And Laraib, we are joined by an extremely special guest today. With us, we have the PA announcer and game day host of your New Orleans Saints. I'm rocking my Chris Olave jersey to support. Super special episode. David, how are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing very well. Thank y'all for asking me to come on, inviting me out, and having me. Looking forward to chatting some New Orleans Saints football.
Yes, sir. Sounding pristine as always, David. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So can you explain exactly what your position is for the Saints? I mean, it sounds like a fantastic, just a really fun gig.
Yeah, absolutely. So the New Orleans Saints are pretty dynamic in the fact that we have two PA announcers. Not every team does. There's myself, and I get to pick up some of the other duties left behind by the iconic Mark Romig. The Romig family, a lot of people know, longtime fans know, Jerry Romig was the original play caller for the New Orleans Saints from day one, game one. When he retired, his son Mark took over, and he has been toeing the line ever since then. And to me, he's an icon. Blessed to get to work next to him. So when you're in the dome and you hear first down Saints, that's actually Mark. Move them chains. Mark Romig. Touchdown. Mark Romig. Anything that's gameplay related is Mark Romig. But if you're there early enough for player introductions and you hear, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome your New Orleans Saints? That's me. That's the stuff I get to do. I get to announce national anthem. I get to do the Coca-Cola Cash Catch, all the things that would happen when the networks go to commercial break that we do to interact with the fans in the stadium. Those are things that I get to do. And then we actually have a third host as well. His name is Theo Mitchell, and Theo usually is the host who is running up and down the stands in and around and getting a chance to throw mics in faces of fans. And he helps with a lot of our promotional activities and interactions and things like that. So that's what I get to do. I get to call out the players. This is my sixth season, so I am blessed to have been able to call some pretty iconic names, and just man, I get to be a part of Saints football. As a lifelong Saints fan, there's no better gig on the planet.
Mm-hmm. And so can you run us through, like, what is a 12 o'clock noon kickoff day kind of like for you? Can you walk us through that?
Yes, I wake up very early at like 5:30 in the morning. Call for game day for us. We've got to be there no later than 4 hours prior to kickoff for all games. Sometimes we try to get in there a little early, especially if we know we're fighting traffic or the rest of it. But all the things that you see that we do on game day, we rehearse prior to. So, I mean, literally every little aspect of the game we rehearse. We go through all the things. We practice with the pump, pass, and kick machine for the Coca-Cola Cash Catch. Make sure that's working. We have all of our halftime entertainment, national anthem entertainment. We make sure everybody comes in. When you're talking about a football game, you're talking about network timing to the second. So we got to make sure like there's such a window allotted for us to do certain things. And we have to make sure that the people that we bring in week to week, the national anthem singers and those kind of people that don't have an every game responsibility with us, that they can do their parts within the windows the network establishes for us, and that everything works so smoothly that when the fans are there, they don't even know all the hard work that goes in. So then I have some things that we're going to be doing some new dynamic things this season that I have been asked not to talk about. But I will say, you definitely, if you can get your hands on tickets, you should come see because we're spicing up the show at the Caesars Superdome this year. And we would love for folks to come out and see some of the cool new things we're doing, some of the cool new production elements that we've added. It's going to be kind of neat. But because of that, some of the things that I do, my responsibilities start probably about 45 minutes before actual kickoff. So as fans are coming into the dome, we start to introduce different player groupings as they're going through their warm ups. We have a bunch of different elements to our pregame show before we get to player intros and national anthem and kickoff and all the rest of that. Then, of course, we go through the game with all the different components. And then once it's all said and done, I'm the last voice you hear at the Dome saying, thanks, Saints fans, for being some of the best fans in the NFL. Don't forget about your the Saints app presented by Verizon. Tune into WWL, all the rest of that stuff. And we'll see you next week. Bye. And then we just kind of wait for the fans to trickle out so we don't have to fight traffic as bad as everybody else does. So we'll kind of hang out for a little bit. And I usually make it home after a noon kickoff. I live on the North Shore. I usually make it home about 5 o'clock. So it's a 12-hour day for a 4-hour game. Totally worth it though.
No, that is such a cool opportunity, and I'm so excited for you, David, going into your 6th season. So, hey, Saints fans or any fans going to Saints games this season, make sure you keep your ears open for David Storm. He will be there all season long. Dave, we are so excited not only to listen to you, but to watch these Saints because it's been a very interesting offseason. And let's go ahead and get into that. We're excited to have David along with us to talk some Saints football this episode. So quick look at the offseason, obviously finishing last year at 9-8, a little underwhelming considering where expectations were entering the season. So now you kind of go into another season trying to maintain that level of competitiveness, but trying to shore up the edges in the games where it was just the tightest of margins in which the game fell out of course for the Saints. So going into this offseason, it was a big focus on trying to shore up the trenches, had some unfortunate changes on the offensive side, but just some notable acquisitions I want to shout out. Chase Young from the 49ers, Willie Gay from the Chiefs, 2 high-level defenders on championship-level defenses. You bring in a wide receiver, Cedric Wilson, and then some offensive line depth and Lucas Patrick. And then you go ahead and you draft some studs. Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. He's going to be a star at the starting left tackle this season. Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Spencer Rattler is super exciting prospect, a quarterback. Still don't know whether or not he's going to win that QB2 over Jake Hayner. And then another exciting rookie out of Pitt, Bub Means. And then one of the most exciting acquisitions of the offseason, Clint Kubiak from the 49ers, just bringing in that new offensive system. Obviously, you lose Pete Carmichael, bring in Clint Kubiak. This is just the offensive system that's being adapted all over the league. You're seeing this Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay style of offense, West Coast offense. Just that is the league nowadays. A lot of motion, a lot emphasis on running the ball, passing down the middle of the field. Laraib, so just in terms of what the Saints have gained this offseason, what are you the most excited for?
I think I'm most excited for what you just mentioned, Lewis. It's that pre-snap motion. We look at the Saints from last year, dead last in pre-snap motion and dead last in play action. Now you're bringing in a guy from the 49ers system who used motion 61% of the time. I think this is really going to open up the Saints offense this year. And I think Clint Kubiak is going to be the major acquisition that y'all Saints fans are going to be talking about next offseason, looking back at what this season is going to show for the Saints team.
Yeah, and David, I want to throw that question as you as well. Obviously, Clint's going to bring a lot to this offense, but what excites you defensively in terms of new blood on this team?
So defensively, Dennis Allen has always been, even under Sean Payton, I would consider him almost an iconic defensive mind. When you look at the ways as a defensive coordinator, he kept Tom Brady under wraps and a lot of these other high level quarterbacks who would come into our house or we would go into theirs, and the way that we would defensively game plan from that. We have a very aggressive defense. We're keeping Tyrann Mathieu, we're keeping Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. We have some absolute studs that the organization has made a priority to keep. And if those guys can continue to play at that high level, especially adding a Kool-Aid McKinstry, a top level prospect coming out of Alabama, I really feel like the sky is the limit. I'm going to say this and only this when it comes to the defense in the preseason. We didn't see a whole lot defensively. I mean, we did see the defense hold teams um, with the exception of the Tennessee game, to less than 20 points in most of those games. And that's you hold any team to 20 points in a game, and you got a really good chance of winning that game. we didn't see a lot of turnovers. And I am excited to see when the lights really come on, when the season really starts and everybody's really playing at full speed, what have they been holding back on? You know that the players, they don't want to get themselves hurt in preseason. They don't want to show everything. You don't want to give up a whole lot of tape. But they were outstanding defensively last season. I would love to see another New Orleans Saints defense that gives our offense as many opportunities as possible to put points on the board.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there, David, because I think Dennis Allen overall is a very highly criticized coach in a lot of NFL circles, but his defensive expertise cannot go unnoticed because as his time being a part of NFL teams, he has hosted a top 10 defense in 90% of the seasons. That in only 2 seasons he is not a top 10 defense, he was in the top 20. So he is not a defensive coach to, disregard. And what he was able to do, even with last year's roster, I was highly skeptical based off of our defensive front. Cam Jordan getting up there in age really didn't have, you lost a lot of guys. Carl Granderson was kind of just an unknown. What he was able to do in developing the defensive linemen, top 10 in sacks last year. And a lot of that was great coverage on the back end and just forcing, all these schemes, getting to Mario Davis. And like you said, that aggressive style of defense. And now you bring in more aggressive football players. Willie Gay from the 49ers, or from the Chiefs, excuse me, super fast sideline to sideline guy, forced a lot of fumbles and had huge moments in big time games. And then Chase Young, former first overall pick in the NFL draft, showed a ton of flashes. I would argue his best game last season was the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, which he was wrecking the game until, just the fourth quarter, everything wore down. But if he is just a small additive piece for us and has these flashes here and there, that's a huge plus for this Dennis Allen defense in terms of being aggressive and forcing turnovers. Like you said, just giving more opportunities to this offense. Laraib, let's go ahead and look at this depth chart because we made a lot of changes recently. As the time we're filming this, the total cuts we cut down to our 53-man roster as of Tuesday, or to the 28th, in which we are talking right now. When you're looking at this offensive depth chart, Laraib, what are the things that stand out to you in terms of how this could affect the Saints season?
It's going to start with the offensive line, Lewis. Now, historically, the Saints in the past couple of years, especially in the Breeze era, had an astounding offensive line. But if you look at the Pro Football Focus rankings for this year on the offensive line, their unit is ranked 32nd in the league. And that is just not going to cut it for this team, especially with Derek Carr going into his second year, who really struggled last year. You look at Mardi Gras season, you see the red zone zombie float flying past you on St. Charles. And so I think it really starts with the offensive line and the depth that they have there. And it really sucks because now you have Ryan Ramczyk done for the season. And then you have Trevor Penning as your starting right tackle. And then Eric McCoy is really just the one trying to hold it down for that unit. And so it's just going to be on this team to get some of that pre-snap motion in to kind of help that offensive line, get that play action going to help that offensive line as much as they can this season.
Yeah, notable losses on that offensive line. You mentioned Ryan Ramczyk, unfortunately out for the season. You lose Andrews Pete to free agency, and Landon Young also retired. That's just a ton of starting reps for offensive linemen from last season and guys who have started a lot of games for the New Orleans Saints. So I want to just quickly hit on that because the big thing for Clint Kubiak and the Shanahan style of offense is being able to run the ball, because that sets everything up. That sets the motion up. That sets all the disguises up. And if you're unable to run the ball, the Saints last year, bottom 10 in the league in rushing efficiency, rushing yards, rushing attempts. They were not able to run the ball. And when Derek Carr has been at his best in Oakland or Las Vegas when he was with the Raiders before, it was when they were able to set up the play action via the run. You had Josh Jacobs having big seasons there before. So if this offense wants to reach its full potential, they need to be able to run the ball with this offensive line. So, David, I want to throw this at you. Looking at this offensive roster, what do you make of it heading into this season?
I feel like this year, if you were paying attention to some of the things you saw in preseason, you may be very pleasantly surprised. Last year, right around this time, I was a part of a different sports broadcast team. And one of my big points was I was so excited. We got Jamal Williams, who was coming off of an incredible season in Detroit. You've got Alvin Kamara, who has been a stud since day one. That's a two-headed dragon in the backfield. And I feel like last year they did not take advantage of that. They had some issues last year where they really kind of had to put Jamal Williams more in fullback capacity, which didn't give him an opportunity to really blossom in the black and gold offensive scheme. And I'm not going to take anything away from Pete Carmichael. What he did when he was here helped to make those New Orleans Saints one of the most iconic, powerful offensive teams in history. But that, I believe, was in the largest compliment to Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a former quarterback himself, an offensive minded coach. He was there to check and balance Pete Carmichael. And funny stat, the season that Sean Payton was out from Bountygate, statistically Drew Brees' worst season. That's when he had the lowest completion percentage. He threw for some of the least yardage that year. It was one of the Saints' offensively most stagnant seasons under the Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael era. You've got a guy now coming in from a tried and true proven system in Clint Kubiak, who is going to get a chance to do some things that hopefully will free Dennis Allen up a little bit more to kind of really rein in and focus on the defense if the offense is doing what they're supposed to do. If you paid attention during the preseason, you saw some things that give you a lot of hope coming out of the Saints backfield. You saw them integrating Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. We've got some other running backs that are going to be sticking around with us that are going to eventually get runs. You got Adam Prentice, who's still back there, the fullback. But you know who else took a couple snaps at fullback this preseason?
Taysom Hill.
Old Mr. Football,
Yeah.
Taysom Hill. That's a wrinkle I don't think anybody was expecting. And if they're willing to show us just a smidgen of that wrinkle in preseason, what does that mean they're holding on to for the regular season?
Right.
As a fullback, he could catch the ball, run the ball. He could take a handoff and throw the ball. He could be part of a flea flicker setup with Derek Carr or whatever quarterback may or may not be in at the time. You have no idea who's going to run, throw, or whatever. It's another opportunity to keep defenses really on their toes. Outside of the backfield, when you look at the receivers that we've got Chris Olave, you've got Rashid Shaheed, you've got Foster Moreau at tight end, we've got Bub Means that we drafted in the offseason, A.T. Perry. We've got guys that can do some pretty impressive things. I think the biggest thing that's going to be a challenge for us this year is going to be getting Derek Carr protection. He really didn't have that last year, which really did not give him an opportunity to let things develop the way that he wanted to. And I think that, knowing that Trevor Penning has been touted as being the weak link, we're yet to see whether or not he's going to evolve beyond that stigma this season. But you've got Fuaga who comes in, who did not in his entire college career give up one single sack. That's huge. Eric McCoy, veteran. You've got a lot of big boys with a lot of experience on that line. And you've got Clint Kubiak knowing that he's going to know what does work and what doesn't work for our offensive line. And you've got to imagine that he's going to do his best to game plan for all those things. So maybe this season you're looking at maybe a higher percentage of more short yardage and check down plays in your first and second down situations. Maybe he comes out and he's as explosively minded as Sean Payton was. And, maybe you start to see him looking for Rashid Shaheed blowing by folks going down the sidelines on a 1st and 10. You never know. I think the thing that excites me most about this Saints offense is the question mark of not knowing what we're going to get.
That scares me.
Being able to go, look, we have all of these weapons, and if we can just get to a point where we can use them, man, the sky could be the limit this season.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point when you said, because I would look at the San Francisco 49ers offensive line from last season really not being too impressive outside of Trent Williams, who's just a stud over there. A lot of question marks, just give guys who really haven't proven it in the past. But what he was able to do is implementing the short game, just, moving the pocket a lot, getting Brock Purdy out of the pocket, and then a lot of the motion, just getting defensive second guessing. That extra second, that tick in your head of that indecisiveness, we'll just buy you that extra second for a guy to get open down the field. Like you mentioned, Rashid Shaheed above Means, who I'm really excited about. They've been using him all over the formation as well. So I'm excited about him. And then, yeah, you mentioned Mr. Taysom Hill. He's in the lineup almost every single position on the offense. He might even get in a guard if you ask him to. But I'll be very excited to see what they do with that.
Let me ask you one quick question. Going to
Yeah.
both of you guys. It's no secret, like I said, Trevor Penning is catching a lot of flack for being the weak link, not living up to expectations, as the media has said. Now, let's just say he doesn't this season. And let's just say Clint Kubiak is aware that maybe he's going to be the weak link in the chain of our offensive line. Would you feel more comfortable knowing that you have Taysom Hill right behind him to pick up the slack if somebody gets beyond Trevor Penning?
Oh,
Larav?
100%. Yeah, I
Taysom
believe
Hill
so.
picks up that block that gets by him just to buy Derek Carr that extra second or two. I
Him or
mean,
Jamal Williams back there trying to, there's some big bodies with some big old legs trying to, just pick up an extra, just a little chip block on the side could definitely make the difference this year.
yep. I
Well,
think that we are so set for some really potentially exciting Saints football.
yeah, and then Foster Moreau as well. I mean, he was really a very effective blocker last season and during his time with the Raiders as well. So that's an exciting part. Just another chess piece for this offense that I'm super excited to get into. All right, well, the Saints are very exciting, and I think we're kind of at the same consensus. The defense is a known quantity with just excitement, and the offense is a bit of an unknown, but a lot of flashes of positivity that we can look forward to, especially when you bring in that new coordinator. It just brings in a lot of juice for a lot of the guys. But I want to go ahead, Larav, and look over at the rest of the NFC South. You look at the team that probably made the biggest amount of change and currently the favorites to win the division, the Atlanta Falcons. How do you see? I mean, you bring in Raheem Morris, you replace Arthur Smith, Kirk Cousins, the new quarterback, two huge acquisitions, Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons on the defensive end. Would you currently slate them as the favorites to win this division?
I would. Now, I'm maybe not as high on them as everyone else is. Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles tear from last season. So everyone thinking that he's just going to go in there and be regular old Kirk Cousins at his 30 plus age, I don't think that's going to be entirely true. Now, they do have Bijan Robinson and a solid offensive line, which can really help Kirk Cousins. And I think they will win this division, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as everyone else is saying it's going to be.
And then, David, I want to throw this one at you because I know you're starting to circle it as it's quickly approaching. But we get a new look Carolina team coming into the Dome on September 8th, I believe. Is that the kickoff date?
And it's game one, not this Sunday coming, but next.
Yeah. So, Bryce Young, tough season last year. You can say maybe he wasn't ready for it, the frame, things like that. Or maybe it was the team around him. They spent a lot of money on the offensive line. What do you make of this Panthers team? A large laughing stock of the league. Do you think this is going to be a new and improved Panthers team?
I because of all the unknowns surrounding who they lost, who they picked up, acquisitions and whatnot. Um, I don't know. I would tell you my gut tells me that the Panthers that they can only go up from where they were last year. But are they going to skyrocket to a division threat this season? No, I don't think they will. I think you're probably looking at a team that in Carolina is going to get 7, maybe 8 wins this season, which is a vast improvement from what they did last season. But you don't rebuild overnight. It's something that takes time. It takes cap space. It takes coaching. Um, I think what bodes well for us is getting them week one. There's a
Yes.
lot about what we're going to do that no one has seen yet. So there is no way Carolina can game plan for all the parts of our brand new offense that no one has ever seen. Also, it's going to be in the dome. If you remember, uh, Young last year did not have a good day in the dome. At one point, he got so banged up and beat up, he lined up under tackle. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't even under center. The running back had to move him over. Um, I'm sure that those are wrongs that he would like to right when he comes back into the dome. But you also have the mentality of the New Orleans Saints that go, hey, look, um, and to an extent, everybody in the division. The NFC South was one of the NFL's weakest divisions last year, if not the weakest. So everybody is poised to make a statement this year, at least going into week 1. Who is going to make the biggest statement? If we're just talking New Orleans Saints and Carolina Panthers, the Saints have a bigger statement to make, and they have to make it at home. So I would be more concerned about playing the Panthers in Carolina later in the season than I will be in our season opener.
Yeah, and whenever we're talking, because I would agree, week 1 when there's so much new head coach, new coordinators, like we're talking about with the Saints, those things might take a while to figure out, especially when we talk offensive line. A big point I always mention early on in seasons, offensive line, even though you can get theoretical upgrades at positions, it takes a while for communication and to build up those reps and that trust with the quarterback to know where he gets his feeling in the pocket. So I think it'll be like a lower scoring, just talking about week 1 quickly. But we have a known quantity in our defense. Whereas Carolina, you lose a stud in Brian Burns, and just unfortunate circumstances. The secondary, J.C. Horn, just feels like he can never get a full healthy season. They do have some pieces I like, Frankie Louvu in the linebacking core, but overall, it's just kind of a question mark for that defense that had some decent moments last year. But when you get rid of your best player, it's like, what are we doing now? Now, I do really like Derek Brown in the interior, and I think they could be a formidable run defense, but it's a question whether or not the secondary will be able to hold up long term. But you made up a good point. Later on in the season, if they do start to figure things out, this could be a much more scary Panther team. And then quickly, Laraib, the Buccaneers lose offensive coordinator Dave Canales to the aforementioned Panthers. I think general expectations for them is a season more of the same. Baker Mayfield had some really good moments, but now Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, another year. Offensive line really took some losses this offseason. The defense still has good pieces, but you lose Devin White to the Eagles. And then Carlton Davis goes to Lions. What do you make of this Tampa team?
Yeah, they're the team I really don't have the best input on because we look at everyone else, all the additions they brought in. But for this Bucks team, like you mentioned, it was only losses during this offseason. And the big one, of course, is Dave Canales. Now, what is Baker Mayfield going to look post Dave Canales? It's yet to be seen. And like you mentioned, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans just getting a year older. Rashad White, a nice young piece, but just playing behind a terrible offensive line. And then just defensive pieces that are just keep on getting older. And like you mentioned, Levante David and their defensive tackle, whose name is losing me, Vita Vea. So just a team that continues to get older, didn't bring in any big additions. I'm predicting maybe a 6-win team for a playoff team from last year.
All right. Well, we are now here. Main event, David. We are going to go through, and you are going to be our guest picker for today. The full Saints season breakdown. We're going to go game by game. You tell us win, loss, and why do you feel that way? Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. We already mentioned this game. We're excited for it. First debut of season 6 of David Storm in the Superdome, hosting the Carolina Panthers. What do you got?
It's us all day. It's us. NFC South divisional opponent, one that is still struggling to find their footing. We just had our first opportunity as fans to see the Saints. And even with it being the final game of the preseason, even with it not being a full house, even without seeing our starters at all, the Saints fans proved that they still are the best fans in the NFL. When you come out week 1, game 1, with a brand new Orleans Saints offense that you're looking to show off, I'm sorry, I really don't feel like Carolina's got a shot. Not a chance.
I love that. I love that
Saints
energy.
are going to win. I'll give it to you low scoring. I'm looking at like 24-13 Saints.
All right, I love it. All right, next week we go at Dallas. Maybe First and Goal hosts might be in attendance. We're still figuring it out, but just maybe some extra Saints fans in the building. At Dallas, though, what are you feeling?
All right, so as much fun and hype and pomp as I put into the Saints Panthers game, and as much as I would love to see the Saints go 17-0, I'm going to do my best to be realistic about this. Dallas tends to play really well at the beginning of the year, and then they choke about mid-season towards the end of the season and fall off right in the first week of the playoffs, which means they're going to come out, they're going to play well. They just signed CeeDee Lamb. You've got Elliott sticking around back there. There's a lot of good carryover in Dallas that I think could make it real hard for the Saints to succeed against the Cowgirls. And I'm going to end up eating those words. I think that's going to be an L for us.
All right. And then we have next week another home game. We have the Philadelphia Eagles, who had a very interesting end to their season last year. Not what they wanted, but going at home. What are you feeling?
My take on the Eagles is based on what we saw from them coming out of last season. We saw an end year implosion of the Eagles. Jason Kelsey is gone. So you're going to be looking at another new center. Not another, but they're going to be looking at a new center. You've got a number of pieces. I mean, you're going to keep Jalen Hurts. You've got, I believe, DeAndre Swift stuck around. You've got a bunch of people out there who are legit playmakers in Philadelphia. But despite having all those playmakers, they could not get them together. I'm going to give the Saints this one in a close one, in a real close one. They need to pick me up between Dallas and Atlanta. So I'm going to say that's a win for the Saints. 3 points or less, Saints will win.
I love it. Laura, any thoughts on that one?
Interesting. No, the Eagles are a team that I'm surprisingly high on going into this season. I think the new blood that they brought in is going to be a change for them on the offensive side of the ball. We'll see a little bit more cohesion. Now, this is going to be in the Superdome, and the Eagles definitely have struggle there. And so I guess I'm going with the Saints on this one. I'm going to go less than 3 points. I'm going to say by 1 point, the Saints sneak out a win at home.
All right, David, your 2-1 Saints are now heading to Atlanta. Just noon game. What do you got?
All right. As a diehard Saints fan, I'm going to tell you right now, whether it's this game versus Atlanta in the Dome, or actually this is in Atlanta rather, or when we
Yes.
get them November back in the Dome, hate a dirty bird. I will never, ever tell you that I think the Falcons are going to beat the Saints. So you could chalk that one up as a win because we're going to be going in to play all those things. Now, here's the thing. Realistically speaking, we are going to be playing them for the first time this season. It's going to be on their home turf. We do pretty well in Atlanta against the Falcons. Everybody is talking about the Falcons could be the team to beat this year. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Kirk Cousins doesn't have an S on his chest. And even if he did, I saw Batman versus Superman. He can die. So I'm saying Superman can die. I'm not asking for death of Kirk Cousins. I don't think the Falcons are going to be the team to beat. I'm going to say this right now, and I'm not saying it because I'm with the organization. I'm not saying it because I'm a diehard. I'm saying it because I believe it. It's a sleeper thing. You don't know it yet, but the Saints are the team to beat this season. Give me the Saints in Atlanta.
I love it. And you know what's funny is for some weird reason, we have won 5 out of the last 6 games in Atlanta. We've only won 2 out of the last 6 games in New Orleans in the last 6 years against Atlanta. So strange home for home between the two teams. Obviously, we swept those Dirty Birds last year. So, you know. Anyway, now you got Monday Night Football. This will be at the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Are we the giant topplers, David?
No, absolutely not. Kansas
Okay.
City's going to win that game. What they're doing in Kansas City, what they've been doing for the past couple of years is just so good.
Remarkable.
We got a chance to see Kansas City in the Dome. I think if it wasn't
Last
last
preseason.
season,
Last
well,
preseason.
No, so it was the season before that when we actually had them in a regular season game.
Oh, okay.
And I'm trying for the life of me to remember. Oh, okay. You remember the movie The Longest Yard, the Adam Sandler remake?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was that little creepy spy guy, right? And he was going back and he was telling the guards when they got Nelly to do the running back. He goes, "He's fast. He's so fast. He makes other people look not fast." That's just the way they play in Kansas City. And for the love of God, they can have a play completely implode, and Patrick Mahomes throws the ball behind his back to Travis Kelce, and suddenly it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm not going to say that the Chiefs are unbeatable. I just don't think we have their number this season. We're going to take that L.
Laraib?
Yeah, hard to disagree on that one. I've been beaten in the past by this Chiefs team for many a playoffs, and so gotta pick this Patrick Mahomes in this one.
All right. So now you're 3-2 Kansas City Chiefs, or 3-2 New Orleans Saints, excuse me, are at home again, noon game against Tampa. What are you feeling, David?
Want the Saints to sweep the division. Realistically, don't think it's going to happen. I think Tampa Bay squeaks by us in this
At
one.
home.
I think they do.
Okay.
I think they do. And here's why. It is October 13th. You just got beat by the Chiefs. You want to have a show out. But right on the other side of that Tampa Bay game, you have the returning Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos on a short week in 4 days. Now, I know that they're professionals, and I know that they're not going to look beyond anybody, but don't tell me for a second. I know as a fan, I'm going to be like, I just can't wait till Thursday. I'm going to wake up Sunday morning going, I can't wait till Thursday. And I feel like that's going to be the trap game for the Saints, the divisional trap game. We're going to take an L against Tampa Bay.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's go to it. You know, you mentioned it. I'll let you have the floor in this one. The Denver Broncos come in, and obviously it is a homecoming for one Sean Payton on October 17th. What an exciting game. Floor is yours, David.
I feel like there are a ton of people out there who are waiting to hear me say that Sean Payton is going to come in and wipe the floor with Dennis Allen. Let me ask you guys one question. Who was Bill Belichick without Tom Brady?
Oof. Mac Jones.
So far, who has Sean Payton been without Drew Brees?
Mediocre.
We had a fantastic draft class of quarterbacks this year. And Sean Payton got one of those, and they're going to be starting this year. But it's prime time in New Orleans. The return of Sean Payton, Saints on a potential 2-game losing streak. And let me just put this one out there. There are rumblings that this game could be the game that the New Orleans Saints recognize the induction of Drew Brees into the Saints Hall of Fame.
Wow.
If that is the case, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it's not, I'm saying there are rumblings. But if it is, how do the Saints lose that game? How do they lose that game? They don't. They cannot. Denver goes home with an L. Saints win on Thursday night.
That just made my heart sink a little bit. Even thinking about, hey, breaking news: Commanders trading defensive tackle John Ridgeway to the Saints. More defensive line depth. There we go. Breaking news on the pod. Laraib, quick thought: Sean Payton homecoming.
I think even if there was not or wasn't or was a homecoming, even if Drew Brees is getting inducted to the Hall of Fame, this Broncos team just does not clear any expectations. I mean, with Sean Payton as the head coach, with Bo Nix as a rookie quarterback, with Devontae Williams coming off, Achilles tear, I just don't think that this Broncos team can be on the same field as the Saints roster, offensively or defensively. I think the Saints team, especially with the added expectation of Sean Payton coming back, I think the Saints blow them out of the water in this one.
All right. Then you have an extra few days of rest after playing on Thursday Night Football. Now you are traveling to Los Angeles, West Coast trip to face the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, now the head coach. How are we feeling?
I'm saying you're riding the high from New Orleans after Denver into LA for the Chargers. Yeah, you got Harbaugh, new coach. By this time, we're going to have plenty of game footage to get a chance to take a look at. I am not really worried about having to face a Harbaugh in California. I think buckle up. It's about to get real fun to be a Saints fan. We're going to go on a bit of a win streak starting Thursday, October 17th, carrying us through the 27th. We're going to take another W against the Chargers.
All right, I love it. So 5-3 here. You're forecasting a win streak. So we're looking next at Carolina, like you mentioned earlier. Could be a tough game. What do you think?
It's going to be a low-scoring game. Saints are going to pull it off.
All right, let's keep this rolling. Is the win streak going to continue? 6-3 now. Home Atlanta Falcons.
4 in a row.
All right.
Absolutely, it does.
Now you're playing home Cleveland, another noon Sunday game.
This is going to be a spoiler. This is where the
Okay.
streak ends. 4 is nice, but Cleveland is going to sneak by us in a close one.
Okay, so we're sitting here at 7-4 going into the bye week. Love to have a above 500 record, 3 games above 500. And I love a late bye week. Just everyone needs a little rest, especially that late into the season. So this is a prime opportunity after having such early bye weeks the past few years, which has been so disappointing. After the bye week, huge game, embarrassed by this team on national television last season. You're hosting the Los Angeles Rams coming off a bye.
I'm going to tell you what I want to see. I don't know what we're going to see. LA has been on borrowed time. We never paid them back for robbing us from the Tudat season. That no call, that robbery in the NFC Championship game, we still owe you one. We're still holding on to the receipt, and we hadn't given it to you. I feel like this might be the year. This might be the year. I'm going to take the Saints at home over the Rams. It was going to be bloody, ugly, aggressive. I want the Saints in this one.
Laraib, any thoughts on the Rams at this point in the season?
They lose Aaron Donald, from retirement, and then they lose their defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris. I think we're looking at a down year for the Rams. Cooper Kupp getting a year older, Matt Stafford getting a year older. Like David mentioned, they're kind of just living on this borrowed time from that Super Bowl a couple years ago. I'm expecting a really bad year for them, and I think the Saints absolutely kill them in this one too.
God, I hope so, because you brought up some bad memories right there of sitting in that stadium, man. But let's wipe the slate clean and move on to 8-4, David. Now going to the Big Apple to face the Giants in New York at noon. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling like at this point, the Saints will leave New York 9-4.
Woo!
And everybody's starting to talk about Dennis Allen still has 4 games left to coach in the regular season, and he has already met the greatest head coaching season record he's ever had. What is where's he going to go from here?
Well,
it's going to be an interesting narrative.
Let's hope. That'd be a narrative I'd love to debate versus who's the next coach. So, but we're here 9-4, homecoming against a fan state favorite, Jaden Daniels, the Washington Commanders coming to New Orleans, a building he's played in before. What do you think of Jaden Daniels, the Commanders coming to New Orleans?
So, the question mark about this game is, will it be the Saints versus the Commanders, or will it be the Saints versus Jaden Daniels? It's almost like getting Joe Burrow and the Bengals to come back to the Dome. As Saints fans, you want to cheer against your opponent, but Jaden Daniels is he's Jaden Daniels.
He's a Heisman. He's a fan
Heisman
favorite.
Trophy winner. He is a native son of the state of Louisiana. So you want to see him do well. The thing that makes this game hard to pick, we don't know what Washington is going to look like this year. We don't know if they're going to be able to keep Jaden Daniels healthy. We don't know if they're going to let Jaden Daniels continue to be the Jaden Daniels he was in LSU, or if they're going to try to mold him into more of a pro set quarterback where they're going to limit his scrambling ability. But in the NFL nowadays, you're seeing a lot more of those scrambling quarterbacks. The Saints have not fared well against scrambling quarterbacks. Joshua Dobbs last year in Minnesota, even when we faced him, not this past week, but the week prior in preseason, I don't know what it is. We haven't figured out how to stop a mobile quarterback. If Jaden Daniels gets to be LSU Jaden Daniels, he could be running all over the Superdome, and that could be really tough for us. I'm going to call this one a heartbreaker, a very close L for the Saints.
And then you had those annoying LSU fans who are going to be pumping their fists in the stands, and you just got to look at them in disgust We don't accept that. We don't accept that. But I do hope the best for Jaden Daniels entering this season. Then you play a game that a lot of people in the schedule dropped. This is the first one they looked at and just kind of sighed. At Green Bay in December at a night game. I don't know how cold that game is going to be 2 days before Christmas, but that's just a really tough draw from the schedule makers. What do you got here?
So we looked at it last year. We had to play Green Bay in Green Bay last year early on.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, the Saints don't play well in Lambeau. They don't. They have a tremendous losing percentage in Lambeau. But if it weren't for the fourth quarter last year, we'd have added another one in the win column. I think we're going to be a much better team this year, and I don't know that Green Bay will be. I think it's a Christmas miracle. The Saints win in Lambeau just before Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Laura, you had a surprise reaction to not hearing Green Bay is better. Did you have a counter argument?
I'm just gonna have to disagree on this one, David. Unfortunately, I think this Packers team with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur are just offensively going to be way better than the Saints this year. And I think at home they get that little extra edge. Jordan Love played terrible last time when these two teams played in September. I think he gets back on track with this one, and the Packers pull off the dub in Lambeau.
Cam Jordan,
considering the history, I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. I would just like to go on record as saying I did call it a Christmas miracle.
All right. Cam Jordan did say the game last year was the game that gave Jordan Love confidence. So he does blame himself for that. But here we are, 10-5, home for Derek Carr's former team, the Las Vegas Raiders, coming into town. Not a lot of similar blood in that building, but you still got Max Crosby, you still got Devontae Adams. Is Derek Carr going to ball out versus his former team?
If Derek Carr is healthy for that game, abso-freaking-lutely.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, for the longest time, he was the chosen son of the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders. And the reason why he left is because he felt like, for whatever reason, he was no longer in the same good graces. And he is looking for an opportunity to let them know, hey, you screwed up. And what better place than here and now? Where are we at? We're what, 10-5 now?
We are 11-5. Or no, 10-5. Excuse me,
10-5.
Yes.
I'll give you the spoiler. I think the Saints are an 11-win team this year. That's your 11th win.
So no need to just rip the bandage off at Tampa. You know, maybe depending on how this division goes, this game could have super high stakes. Or if we are sitting at 11 wins at this point in the season, this could be a game where we're dusting up with our feet up, ready for the playoffs. But you say this is a loss?
So I do. I think this one's going to be a loss.
So we're getting swept by Tampa this season.
So I think maybe so. I think maybe so. We're going to have the opportunity to. I'm going to say we're give or take one. You know, God forbid if I actually get them all right. It's never happened before in my life, and I doubt very seriously today is the day. If so, I'm going out and buying Powerball tickets. But when it's the end of the season and there's something on the line, and I like, as a fan, that now we're ending the season with divisional opponents, because you know whether or not this game is going to mean something. And I really feel like the battle of the division is going to fall either in New Orleans or Tampa Bay. By taking the L in this one, I don't know that it necessarily means that we are going to be losing the division to Tampa Bay in this game. I really feel like it is going to be one of those games that, for whatever reason, Tampa Bay is going to come out feeling like they've got something to prove. It could be a thing that, you know, maybe we clinch the division with our 11 wins, but if Tampa Bay is looking to pick up their 10th win, they pick up a wild card spot in the playoffs.
Right.
They've got something to play for. We necessarily don't. I mean, at an 11-win team looking at the playoffs with the potential of going a 12-win team, I don't think that puts us in a real seeding predicament where we're going to be playing for a postseason bye if we're a guaranteed division champ. I don't think that it does. So really, ultimately, and it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the teams in the NFC do this year.
Right.
Does it matter if we're third or fourth seed? I really honestly don't know that it will. At third or fourth seed, we're going to be hosting a postseason game regardless. And depending on who's where, say we lose to Tampa Bay and we finish with the fourth seed, but we don't play a lot of our starters, and then they come back in and maybe they are a fifth seed because of tiebreakers, this, that, and the other. Well, we get them right back in the dome the following week,
Right.
and we've got our players playing again.
Right.
I think it's going to be a really interesting scenario. I feel like the Saints are an 11-win team. Here's why. Outside of all the things that I said.
Yeah.
People have been very critical of Dennis Allen. I don't agree with that. I believe Dennis Allen is a coach who, over his head coaching career, has shown progress. He had 2 seasons of 4 wins with the Raiders before they let him go. He came over and he inherited Sean Payton's Saints and won 7. That's better than 4. Then last year, getting a chance to get Derek Carr, he won 9.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 8 that he lost, how many of those could have just as easily been wins? Green Bay alone.
Green Bay
if
won
we hold on
for
to that
sure.
fourth quarter one, then that makes the Saints a 10-win team. Dennis Allen is a 10-win head coach. His second season with the Saints, his 4th head coaching season overall. Now he's got a brand new dynamic offense that, if it works the way they want him to, why can't he add another 2 wins? And I believe that because of the criticism he has received over the past 2 years, I think he knows that this has to be a double-digit win season for him. And if he can take a division crown back from Tampa Bay, who has won it every season since we won it last, he knows what the accomplishments need to be, regardless of the media training and we're going to focus on this game, then that game, then that game. He's got season-ending goals set. I mean, every competitor does. If you don't see the Saints win 11 games this season, if you don't see more progression in the head coaching career of Dennis Allen from a win percentage, I think that as much as I would hate to say it, you're going to see a lot more questions in next year's offseason than you did in this year's.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that, and I love just the thoughts. Right now, over under is set at 8.5 wins. Whenever I'm making a final prediction of a team, I think what translates from season to season, because there's so many variables that can flip a season. Injuries can flip a season. Turnovers can flip a season. Just bad calls, missed opportunities can flip a season. So what are my known quantities entering this season? And I think a lot of that is trench play. Our defensive line has majorly upgraded. I think Chase Young's going to bring a lot of spark, a lot of juice to this pass rush. And I really like the interior. Bringing this guy Ridgeway in midway through the podcast, that's just more excitement to me. What we can do on the defensive front, stopping the run. But the offensive line is a big question mark. It is an unknown quantity. And the things we have seen, I haven't been too promised on. And what this system needs, what this offense requires, is a strong run game. And as much as I love Alvin Kamara and I love him to death, it's just that he had his worst efficient rushing season by far last season. Just those big games, those big rushing plays, it seemed lacking from this offense. And he was used heavily in the passing game, which, as he should, he's an extremely capable receiving back. So I need to see Trevor Penning play capable snaps, or I at least need to see, like you mentioned, the help from guys like Taysom, guys like Foster Moreau, guys like Jamal Williams, like you mentioned, Laraib. And I need to see that in actual practice. I need to see it in a game. So until I can have that confidence, that is just such a big red flag for me. I see this team 8-9. I see 8-win team. Unfortunately, I'm a Saints fan, but I just got to see it how I call it. And I'm optimistic for what the ceiling is, I think there's a high ceiling, low floor team. This could be a lot of variation. And if you mentioned it, if we can get turnovers on our way, and if we can just get a healthy season from Derek Carr, I'm on board with an 11-win season. I'm on board with a division championship. But as things stand now, and I'm just viewing the known quantities, I see this team as a slightly below average NFL team, Laraib.
David, I can't tell you how much of a breath of fresh air it is to have a Saints fan come on this podcast and be goddamn optimistic about a Saints team in the past 3 seasons. All right. Every single year I hear this who and ha about, oh, the Saints are going to be terrible this year.
I didn't say
Every
that.
single person who's come on this podcast as a Saints fan has been so down about the Saints team. But you finally came in here and you talked to us about why the Saints team is going to excel this year. And Lewis, you bring up this offensive line. You mentioned earlier in the podcast about Clint Kubiak, who came for the 49ers, whose offensive line isn't that good, but it was that cornerstone and Trent Williams who can make all the difference. And if Clint Kubiak can come in and use Fuaga as that guy, use Eric McCoy as that guy, use that pre-snap motion, the sky is the limit for this Saints offense. I'm going to say this Saints team goes 10-6, gets a double-digit win and a playoff berth this year.
All right,
Lewis,
I love it. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave you, and I'm gonna leave your viewers and listeners with this.
Okay.
All right. Laraib talked about my optimism coming in. Clearly, I've got a couple of years on you guys. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
23. LeBron.
23. So, what is your first memory as a child? How old were you when you think back to your first, not like football memory, not Saints
Right.
memory, just your first in general overall memory? How old were you?
Oh, 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
old.
4 or 5 years old. So you're talking about 18 years ago.
Right.
18 years ago puts you at 2006, correct?
Yeah.
I would like to point out that that is the year Sean Payton came to the New Orleans Saints. That is the year Drew Brees came to the New Orleans Saints. There is an entire generation of fans who knows nothing more than Sean Payton, Drew Brees, New Orleans Saints football. I'm in my mid-40s. I grew up with Bum Phillips. I grew up watching Bobby Hebert set records. I remember the strike and John Fourcade. I remember Jim Mora. I remember Aaron Brooks. I remember beating Minnesota for our first ever playoff win. I remember our first divisional championship. I remember the years and years and years and years of there's always next season. There's always next season. A lot of Saints fans, and I don't mean this as a dig, are spoiled.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
Because for so many years, almost 20 years, you've had Sean Payton, who came in his first season and took the Saints to an NFC championship game. He's taken the Saints to 3 NFC championship games. That's 3 more than every other coach combined in New Orleans Saints history. So there's a reason for the expectation level of fans to be so high. They've forgotten what it was like to be less than what Sean Payton had us at.
Excellent.
So I'm telling you, keep an open mind. Be ready to be surprised this season. Folks are sleeping on the Saints. It's 10 wins or bust, and I think they leave with 11.
I love it. And look, I want to be proven wrong. I've been a Saints fan my entire life. I love this team. I will go to as many David Storm games this season as I possibly can. And I want to be proven wrong. I don't know. I'm spoiled. And when I don't see Sean Payton, I don't see Drew Brees, and it's hard for me. I'm trying to clutch on to what I know. And I'm not trying to usher a new phase for the Saints, because I've seen teams try to go quickly into that rebuild and they're still in it. And it's 20 years and it's 30 years. So I understand we have the capable talent. Go for it. Go for wins. And I love that strategy. And I am optimistic about this Saints season. So, David, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It has been such an honor to have you on. It's been so cool to talk Saints football with you. And September 8th, kickoff against the Panthers if you are in the stadium, make sure to listen for David Storm and all the exciting announcements that he will be giving throughout the season. Laraib, anything you want to say before we head on out?
Yes, if you also want to come on and talk Saints football or just NFL in general, go ahead and leave us a comment down below or reach out to us on socials. But I think that is a First and Goal
Wait, but
podcast.
before I want an official sign out from our friend here. Give us a New Orleans Saints fan sign out for the end of the pod.
All right. First and foremost, Lewis and Laraib, thank you so much for having me on. It has been an absolute blast and a pleasure, and I have loved every second of it. To all of the Saints fans, the very best fans in the NFL, thank you so much for your undying support. And if you disagree with any of my predictions this season, you can come to the Dome and let me know, and we'll see how it all turns out. Am I right? Am I wrong? Put it in the comments. Keep them in the algorithm. You know what to do. Until then, I look forward to seeing you guys in the Dome. Make sure you're downloading your New Orleans Saints app presented by Verizon for all of your Saints stats, fun facts, and all the rest. And I will see you soon in the Caesars Superdome when we look to celebrate your New Orleans Saints.
All right. And this is the First and Goal podcast signing out. Peace.
Peace.